Hello, Substackers. I just wanted to walk you through a sort of outgrowth of my past article about potentially making an LLM that verifies truth. Um, this isn't an LLM, but it is a computerized or automated version of verifying truth. In short, you input a document, a set of documents about a specific topic, let's say the Apollo mission, and it'll use propositional logic and it will also use um, feature scoring to determine the probability of truth as well as the certainty in that analysis. And so um, it will determine the probability of truth in two main ways. The first way is, like I said, it sort of um, scores features, but the features are specifically about the credibility of the premises. So, you first want to see if the claims made are based off strong evidence and a large quantity of evidence, and you can do that through everything that I wrote in that article about truth. And so, you can extract the features, including evidence quality. So, if there are a lot of assumptions, if you have eyewitness evidence, details on who, what, how, when, where, observational reliability. So, how far away were you from the event? For instance, in the Apollo mission, the astronauts, are the most credible in observational reliability because they were on the moon. Ground control is probably the next layer because they're closest to the astronauts. And then, Apollo 11 denier who was born, let's say, after Apollo 11 was very far from the event and is therefore less credible. It's the same idea as if you try to look at an object. If it's very far away and small, it's very hard to see. If it's up close to you and in front of you, it's easy to perceive reality. And so that's the definition of truth. That's where it comes from, at least. The incentives and motives are important. You want to see if there's an incentive for this person to lie. Let's say if it's monetary or social. Let's say you have Hamas and they're saying, Israel is killing innocent civilians. Then the program would be able to say, like, what are the incentives for Hamas to lie? Well, they want Israel to be destroyed. Israel is their enemy. So therefore, if Hamas says Israel is killing innocent civilians, it's much less credible. Um, then independence from background factors. The whole point of this model is to be a program that ignores your track record, ignores your personality, and just looks at the action, not the person. So it wouldn't look at Hamas and say, it has had a track record of hating Israel, and therefore, they are their claims that Israel is killing innocent civilians are wrong. That's not what. That's not how this would work, because that can also lead to unfair convictions about a person. I explained this in the article, but if you have a criminal who's had a history of crimes, and let's say, you know, statistically those happened a long time ago, or they weren't, very reliable data, you can't assume that that new crime was committed by the person because um, they may have gotten lucky, they may have changed as a person, things happen. So what you can actually do to a Hamas person is say, why do you hate Israel? And if they say, well, because Israel doesn't have the right to exist, that's a circular argument. And so, you have now, based on the program, a reason to believe that their truth is less likely, that there's a less probability of that statement that innocent Gazans are uh, being killed by Israel. You have a stronger case. Use of assumptions, the less assumptions, the better. Yeah, so I mean, all of these were covered in the article. Objectivity, you're maximizing logical validity, and analogies, you're sort of minimizing source proximity, similar to the observation. Exhaustiveness, so exhaustive searches will give you a large selection of high quality and truthful data to choose from, and we'll get to the consequences of that in a second. Political neutrality, so the truth doesn't have like a party affiliation, it just is. Timelessness is important. Truth isn't something that has to do with overwhelming evidence at the time. It is much more timeless. It actually means like no matter if evidence does come to light in the future, it won't change the reality. Reality is irreversible. Information loss, if there's a reporting error or if there's bias in the reporting, that increases the probability of lies. And then finally, this has to do with the exhaustiveness. You want to limit the scope of the search of the knowledge domain for your program so that it can come up with a very complete mapping of all the claims made and analyze it in completeness and fairness. If you leave out details, then your whatever results you get at the end are going to be incomplete, and truth has a completeness about it that you need to preserve for it to be truth. So that sounds circular, but in order to call something a thing, in order to call something true, it has to be entirely true. And so how do you do that? Well, you have to analyze the most densely true data, or you have to be able to find that in order to deem something true, and uh, that means that you have sort of two knobs to turn. One, you decrease the size of the knowledge domain, so you don't choose a massive topic like physics. You don't even choose something like zoology. You choose like all of the data on the Apollo 11 mission. And then the second knob you have to turn is to increase the data that you have on that subject, uh, and the high quality data, which is based off all of the evidence qualities that I have shown earlier. Um, and you have those two things, and you have a high truth density, as I call it. And so that also increases the certainty of your determination. If you have a low truth density, if you haven't had an exhaustive search because it's such a massive domain, then whatever result you get, whatever probability of truth you get is incomplete. So that goes into the certainty metric. So you have all of these features, and they're all probabilistic, and they're used to determine the accuracy of the premises. But the second part to this is not just the accuracy of the premises, but if you can find a contradiction assuming the premises are true. So it's basically like, can you prove that the guy who made the claim was making a logical fault in his own mind? So in his own beliefs, if what he says is true. So you can do that with propositional logic. What you do is you have all of the documents of, let's say about the Apollo 11 mission. So, for instance, where did it go? There it is. For instance, I've downloaded like all of the documents about the Saturn rocket, mission plan, etc. Almost a gigabyte of data, and you can use NLP, or natural language processor, to basically find all of the small claims made in that data. So claims literally just about anything, about reality, about experiences, observations. Then you convert that to propositional symbols, and those are basically mathematical symbols that will give you information on how objects mathematically or logically relate. So you can, P and Q implies P, things like that. They use these ubiquitous symbols, and basically you can now apply all of the standard propositional logical rules once you've converted all of those claims into logic. Those include, modus ponens, modus tollens, syllogisms, and also the forms of, contradiction proofs, contrapositive proofs, and you can apply all those things just as you would in a, typical math environment, which is that's based on pure logic. Uh, so it's unarguable if you can if you can successfully convert to the premises at least without hallucinating, then you can apply the logic and find contradictions. So the idea is if after applying all of the rules to every premise and looping through each one and seeing if you can apply, then you can add nodes slowly, you can add more conclusions slowly, and once you've exhausted all possible logical rules to apply, now you have a list of, a huge amount of nodes, of claims, of conclusions, and if there's a negation of a claim somewhere in there, then there's a contradiction. So, P and not P means there's a contradiction. You find the contradiction, you convert it back to text because all of these symbols represent actual claims, and what you'll get at the end is a absolutely interpretable, human readable sentence that says, well, this statement, had the following logical rule. We use modest ponens to get here, and as you can see, there's a contradiction. This logical conclusion says one thing and another claim says that shouldn't happen. So you have those two things, the propositional logic verification, and you have the feature scoring, and you can multiply those scores basically, and you come up with a truth probability score. And the final thing is the certainty metric, which will give you, how certain that score actually is, based on the exhaustiveness, the quality of the search, etc. And let me just see if I'm missing anything. JSON has a very good form for using, this type of LLM usage. The LLM will just assign values to each feature for the probabilistic version, and then you can use a prompt engineering very specific prompt engineering to reduce the chances of hallucinations when it's converting back and forth between propositional logic and natural language. And yeah, that's it. So I wanted to show you one last thing, which is the sheets. There it is. So this is, for example, one text extracted sheet of, a post-launch report. So, there's a few different columns. This column includes all the text. You have handwritten text on one column as well. This is just a text extractor using a pre-trained model. And once you've extracted the text, then you can basically, you're off to the races, because you can not only apply the LLM, but you can also extract all the claims and use what I call, I forget the acronyms, PTS and SPTE. PTS is the probabilistic one, and SPTE is the symbolic one. So the reason why this is important is, in today's world, like, a lot of misinformation is going around. You have Grok, which is saying anti-Semitic stuff. You have university professors talking about Israel being a colonizer, and it's not good for society because that can cause violence. Like, we've seen riots happening because of Israel-Palestine conflicts and stuff. And we're constantly barraged with information on the internet, and it's so easy to just be led down the wrong path and being complete and having no knowledge of it because you aren't informed enough. You don't have the scope of knowledge that is required to critically think, or you don't know the rules of truth seeking. So you have an AI do it, and and the AI just writes up a report telling you, here's what's less likely to be true, here are the claims, here's why. and it'll give you a simple explanation. And if it's human interpretable, it can be a great way for people uh, to basically find truth in a very untruthful world. So thank you.